I'm trying to make the rounds to as many communities and schools as possible to discuss the budget repair bill, to correct the myths and misunderstandings about the budget repair bill, to talk about the issues in a straightforward manner, and respond to questions in an honest and factual manner so that everyone is more fully informed in terms of the bill, its consequences, the budget, its effect on all of us, and the reasons why my colleagues and I felt compelled to leave Wisconsin. I would like to, again, thank you all for being here. I don't know many of you, but when I look around this room, I see the face of northern Wisconsin. I see retirees, I see students, I see parents, I see laborers, I may see teachers or retired teachers. I see people who work for state employment, may have worked for the DNR. I see wardens, maybe those who work for the state in various capacities. There may be nurses in the room. There may be teachers' aides. There may be nurses' aides. There may be snowplow operators. You are the face of the quality of life of northern Wisconsin. And it is important when we have this discussion about workers that we recognize that it is the workers. Each of you, in whatever your capacity be in northern Wisconsin, contribute to the commonwealth of Wisconsin and makes this a great state. We ought not be at war with the workers in this state. We ought to be working together with the workers of this state to assure that Wisconsin continues to be the great state that it is, and that we continue to grow to a better future for our children and their children too. Okay? I don't know how a budget repair bill became a union-busting legislation. But that's the story that I want to discuss today. Because many people are misinformed about the bill, what it did, what it pretended to do, and what it really did. Now, a little over 4 weeks ago, Governor Walker introduced what he called was the budget repair bill. It was 140 pages. Approximately 40 pages of it dealt with borrowing and restructuring our state, some state loans, so that we could generate $165 million that will cost us $205 million to pay back, but $165 million so that we could balance our budget by July 1. There is no disagreement amongst the Democrats or the Republicans or the public about that $165 million. It is necessary, it is helpful, it has been precedented to do that, take that kind of action, because we must have a balanced budget by July 1. I want to remind you that there have been 2 occasions since when Governor Walker introduced the bill. He said we need to do this. There's an urgency for us to act, or 1,500 employees will lose their jobs. I want to remind you that on 2 different occasions, that deadline for the borrowing has passed, and a new deadline has been created. We now don't have to pass that bill until April 1. Keep in mind that we are still going to be able to pass a bill that borrows the $165 million, enables Wisconsin to pay Minnesota the $52 million we owe in reciprocity, meet our obligations, and have a balanced budget by July 1. The 1,500 layoff notices that were sent out by Governor Walker have been rescinded. And we didn't pass the budget repair bill. So what was left? It was the annihilation of unions. It was the assault on workers. That was what the intention of this issue, the intention of Governor Walker and the Republican lawmakers all along. Let me walk you back again to when Governor Walker introduced that bill. He introduced it on a Monday, or he announced it on a Friday, introduced it on a Monday. On Tuesday, the Joint Committee of Finance, which I am a member, held a public hearing. That hearing began at 10 o'clock. The public began speaking at 11:30. At 10:30 that night, 11 hours later, hundreds of people have testified. Hundreds of people were waiting in line to testify, had registered to testify. Hundreds more were waiting in line to sign up to testify. And the co-chair of the committee, Representative Voss from Racine, announced that he no longer was going to accept signatures, accept slips for participation in the hearing. He proceeded to explain that he felt as though those who were testifying were part of an organized protest. He then went on to say that he knew that this was a citizen filibuster. As a member of the committee, I had two responsibilities. One is to keep the tempers down because the crowd was very angry that somehow their voice was going to be cut off in what was supposed to be an open and transparent hearing. It wasn't their fault that thousands of people wanted to express their 2 minutes about that very important issue. It was his responsibility as the co-chair of the committee who announced the hearing to continue that hearing until the people had spoken. We did, I think, an admirable job in keeping the tone respectful and professional, but challenged the committee chair to remember that this isn't his democracy, it is the people's democracy. And that while people did vote in November, they have a right, they didn't lose their voice in February. And that when people want to speak on an issue as compelling and as important as the one that was before us, government officials cannot get tired just because they don't agree with the people who are speaking. And so that began, that was the beginning of this conflict that was occurring between certain lawmakers who wanted to get this done as quickly as possible and a public who felt a need to tell their story and to try to influence the outcome. Because that's the Wisconsin way. It is the Wisconsin way to work together to solve problems. It is the Wisconsin way to work cooperatively. That is the northern Wisconsin way. People in northern Wisconsin get things done not because they are at war with each other, because they attack each other, but because they work together. And our government has always functioned well working together. The next day, the hearings finally concluded at 3 o'clock in the morning. Except that the 4 Democrats on the committee, myself and 3 others, decided to continue the hearings. And at 3:15, we went to another hearing room, and the hearing continued. And it continued for days, in which citizens of all walks of life testified against this proposal. The Joint Committee on Finance met the next day. We finally concluded our work at midnight. Remember, we are now into day 3. We're taking 3 days to eliminate 52 years of collective bargaining on partisan votes. By the way, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, during this public testimony on Tuesday, Senate leadership announced that they had the votes to pass the bill. Now that's a real insult to the people of Wisconsin who are not members of a particular party, aren't necessarily members of a union, but they are members of the Wisconsin family who felt their voice might make a difference and deserved to be heard. And it was a little premature, more than a little premature, more than a little insulting for the politicians in the majority to say, we don't care. We're going to turn a deaf ear to what you have to say. To the credit of the citizens, they continued to protest in a civil, responsible way, and those protests built. The Joint Committee on Finance finished its meeting at midnight on Wednesday. Now let me tell you what was in this bill before I go to the next step. We know that there was $165 million in there to help pay our bills. There's no disagreement about that. What most people don't know, and what many of you may not realize, is that there were several provisions that had absolutely nothing to do with balancing our budget in the short term.